Now that is what a British car should sound like. In 1983, British car designer Roy Axe from Scunthorpe sharpened his pencil and designed this motor. The Rover 800 was released 40 years ago in 1986 to replace the SD1. Interestingly enough, the SD1 is highly regarded to be the worst Rover ever by me, although it is one of the coolest. At the time, Rover were in partnership with Honda, where they got lots of good ideas from each other and started making cars that were built much better than ever before. Rover was a state-owned company. We, the British people, owned the car until the Tory government decided enough is enough and stepped in to make sure that British Aerospace could buy it for £150 million. At the time, that seemed like a great idea, until he realised they couldn't afford to keep it going. It was costing £2 million a day, so they sold it to BMW for £800 million. Winners, British Aerospace, but we got this car, and some others, but mostly this one. The Honda-Rover relationship was a mostly happy one. This car shares the same platform as the Mark I Legend. Before I go into the rather generic 80s styling of this car, I'd like to talk about the length of it. Put this once big car in a car park and it doesn't look so big any longer. It's narrow, it's low down, but it is long. From here to the front of it is 16 feet. Think of a big car from the 1980s. You're going to go for Granada. This is longer. Think of another one, the Volvo 740 Estate. This is longer. Think of another one. How about the Peugeot 405? This is 1.5 feet longer than that. Only by buying something like a Jaguar XJ or a Rolls Royce would you get a car that's actually longer than this. And I think that's interesting. You may disagree. Now, people say that all modern cars just look the same. They've got no inspiration. They're just dull. They're bland. Then others say, oh yeah, well, what about the stuff from the 80s? They all look the same as well. And you know what? They kind of do. Squint at this Rover from the front and it could be a Renault 21. It could be a Saab. It could be a Montego. And that's it. All cars of all eras do have a striking similarity to each other. It's only when they've almost completely disappeared when you spot one on the road and go, oh, that looks different, because it doesn't look like everything else that's knocking about. Cars of the 60s had angular bits and smooth bits and all sorts of chrome everywhere, and the 70s a bit the same but with pointy bits as well. Then the 80s came around, and Ford, being ahead of the game as far as selling cars in the first place, decided that they should start making cars that look like they've been designed in school. We went back to just square things with lack of design. The future is the past, where we hadn't thought of doing anything with these boxes. And so practically everything from the 80s had the little wedgy front and the straight sides and the back end that doesn't have a great deal of detail. More interested in aerodynamics than looks. Fair enough. Yeah, that is important. At the time, this was quite a big seller. And like all of the 80s motors, they seem to have succumbed to rust and all disappeared. There are about 36 million cars on the UK roads today. And between 15 and 25 are these, the Rover 800, codename XX. The chances of you seeing another one of these whilst you're driving along in it, so very, very slim. You're more likely to be invited to a Badger's tea party. There's quite a bit more than just a little bit of cursory coach work going on. During the past 4 days that I've owned this car, I've looked at it an awful lot. And I've also noticed lots of other people look at it a lot and ask questions about it. You don't get that with your Skoda Octavia. Never buy yourself a retro or a classic car unless you are quite gregarious. Underneath the bonnet of this big green car is a big engine from Japan. It's Honda's 2.7 litre V6 quad cam with 177 brake horsepower. That's quite a bit for the time. The 2.7 wasn't the only engine that this car came with. It started off with a 2 litre with a single cam and a single carburettor. The O series engine, as found in the Montego. Given a bit of time, they fettled with that and put a twin cam head on it and called it the M series. That was much more like it. This isn't even the fancy one. No, there was the SLI, there was the Vitesse, and there was the Sterling. whilst this is just a mere SI. But even so, it has 4 electric windows, it has real wood on the doors and the dashboard. As this car is 37 years old, you would expect quite a few electrics, etc. to no longer work. But they do work. All of the electric windows work, the sunroof works, everything on here works, even the original radio cassette works, I think. I haven't actually tried it yet. A proper old-fashioned heating system here with these sliders, and those work. It's not the best build quality, but it's still there, rather than, you know, no fancy buttons anywhere, no airbags cluttering up the space, and we have the lovely shelf on here that's big enough to fit a crocodile. But for its age, it is surprisingly well together. There are no creaks anywhere in the drive, no creaks as you sit down. Look at the size of this rear door. It's locked. It's huge, and it's huge because of this vast amount of rear legroom. And I haven't put the seat forward to try and make some sort of point of it. This is the normal seating position for pretty much anyone. No wonder they were used as ministerial cars, because you didn't need to opt into some sort of long wheelbase version because it already was a long wheelbase version. There are plenty of cars that are big, but very, very few offer that kind of space in the rear. And again, this amazing attention to detail that we find absolutely everywhere. Rover really did go to great efforts to make this car something special. If you're interested, this is a 454 litre boot, so it's pretty big. Door shut sounds are not a strong point with this car. But in 1983, when Roy Axe was scribbling away, I don't really think they were thinking too much about how a door should sound. At low speeds, the steering is ridiculously light. It's the kind of steering you can operate with one finger. So even if you don't have a proper hand, you can still steer it. This is the kind of car that people do tend to notice. Your peripheral vision alerts you to eyeballs, and I've noticed that quite a lot. This is not in the slightest bit sporty at all. It's about as sporty as a goth in a pair of flip-flops trying to do a 100-metre dash. Oh, when he uses some cable ties to make sure those flip-flops don't come off, suddenly you realise the sporting credentials of said golf. It is only 1,400 kilos. 16 foot, 1,400 kilos. It's not one of these 50-50 balance things where it's designed to be flung around corners like a go-kart. No. It's much more dramatic than that. Back with its original steel wheels on, fling it around a corner and it'll be squealing like an old lady with her hand in a toaster. It's just relaxed. It's as relaxed as a fat man on holiday with a beer. It just goes along perfectly comfortable with a minimal amount of effort or showboating. It's not a very wide car either. And that's down to the platform that it's built on, because in Japan they have width restrictions to avoid having big tax bullies coming demanding more from you and saying, you know, if you're going to have a car that wide, you're going to have to pay a lot more for it. So it was kept within a particular width for that purpose. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have air conditioning, and if it did at 37 years old, the chances are it wouldn't really be working anyway by now. So it drives more like a yacht than a car. If you want a sports car, get a sports car. That's what I say. You don't really need a big saloon to be sporty. It goes against really what it's all about. The 4-speed automatic box is remarkably smooth. I was considering it might be just a bit jerky, but it's really not. Not until you start clogging it and doing the old kick down thing. And it does have a sport mode as well, but I'm not going to try that out. No, I'm not going to bother. Why bother? It's really kind of seems irrelevant, really. People often refer to cars as she's, you know, what a beauty she is, etc. It's bollocks really, isn't it? Because cars aren't he's or she's, they're like fucking sluts. But somehow the Rover 800, and in particular the Mark 1, is a man. He's not only a man, he's a dad. He's like a proper dad, a big dad, a big strong dad who can do things and comes up with solutions to things. Just seems to be very dependable. Japanese petrol engine technology was way ahead of everybody else. They were doing digital engines whilst everybody else was still stuck in analog. They'd make these cars that would start on a flick and would work whatever the conditions, until one of those components goes wrong. And that is my only fear with this, because something like the crank sensor, nobody's got one of those. There, that's how you burn through a bit of fuel. This motor presses every single one of my retro buttons, and all I want to do is just fill it to the top with petrol and spend all day driving it. And that is something that rarely happens. Certainly wouldn't get it in a modern motor. I don't even care that I'm too hot. In conclusion, this has become one of my absolute favourite cars of all time, even though at one point I didn't really even look at them. The only downside are the parts availability, because Honda don't make the bits for the engine any longer, and all various bits of suspension components are practically impossible to get hold of. But there are specialist clubs out there that have managed to just hang on to some little bits, and surely some parts will be remanufactured somewhere else, just not OEM. For me, one of the major downsides is going to be the fuel economy. With the 2.7 V6, it's not that great, but it doesn't have a trip computer to tell you just how bad it actually is, or even to lie about how good it is. But then again, if you're the kind of person that's got the pockets deep enough to buy one of these in this kind of condition that doesn't need any welding anywhere, the fuel economy is probably not going to be such a big deal. So I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. And if you liked this video, please watch more. Please subscribe. And if you are a subscriber, thank you. If you're one of those channel members, very, very big thank you. And for commenting, etc. Please join me in another video quite soon. Bye bye.